We're going to begin a new series, and it's called Triumph in Trouble. Triumph in Trouble. I wonder if you think about Jesus much during the week. I wonder if you think about him. I wonder if you think about what would he have been doing right now if he was in the position I'm in? What would be going through his mind? What would he be cultivating in his heart? How would he be responding to the things that I'm seeing happening to me? We have the Gospels, don't we, which give us four different, incredibly rich perspectives on this man, Jesus. And it's so easy, I think, I found much of my life to be slightly removed from the person, the human being, Jesus, who is kind of described to us in these books. Jesus, for most of what we have, is probably aged between 30 and 33. I wonder, is there anybody in this room who is aged between 30 and 33? Do we have? Oh, great. Would one of you, somebody who's between 30 and 33, stand? Any person who just put their hand up. Okay. Is that right? One of you? Oh, okay, wonderful. Okay. So we have somebody who is 30 to 33 years old. Now, if we were just to imagine, it's Helena. This is Helena, if you don't know Helena. In a week, you can kind of understand she's a human being. She'll have things that she needs to do, things that come unexpectedly, things that she wants to do. And it's the same with Jesus. Like, he was a human being, same age. Things came at him. He walked through life. He ate. He went to the toilet. He spoke with friends. He slept. He was tired. He was excited. He was disappointed. This is the man who we worship. He was a human being, and we want to think about that because he was totally extraordinary. Like from what we read about in the Gospels, Jesus had more power in his hands than any human being who's ever lived. If he saw a leper, he would take away the skin disease that had been on this person no matter how long it had been there. If he came across somebody who'd been paralyzed, whether it was from birth or from an accident or something that happened, he could just speak a word and the paralyzed person would have all the things in them that were causing the problems fixed, healed, and they'd begin to walk. If somebody had a demon that everybody had tried to sort out, he could just walk in, and in that moment, he could remove it and set the person free. If he's in a storm, bad weather, he could just speak, and it would stop. He could silence waves as they're crashing over boats. He had more power than anybody else in history. Jesus was more generous than anyone else in history. He welcomed outcasts. He brought them into him and said, you can be my brother or my sister. We can be family, you and I. Let's eat together. He freely gave. He didn't charge anyone a penny. He just said, whoever you are, whatever you've got, come. I'll give to you no matter what. He forgave errors. He was so generous in his demeanor. Some of his closest followers were so stupid, they got things wrong over and over again, but he never changed in his aspect towards them. He remained kind and generous. He was I think, the most generous person who's ever lived. He was the best teacher who's ever lived. You think about some of the things that are just embedded in our culture. Some of the teachings of the parable of the lost sheep, or the parable of the prodigal son, or the Good Samaritan. Like he made these up. He told them. He created these teachings. He talked about enemy love. He talked about, we think quite a lot of his teachings nobody had ever said before, like the golden rule, like do unto others what you would want them to do to you. He talked about turning the other cheek. He was the greatest teacher who's ever lived. He was also one of the most uncompromising men in history. You couldn't change his mind on anything. People tried. They couldn't get him to back down. They couldn't get him to lower his standards. They couldn't get him to change his approach. Like, they had a whole raft of people trying to kill him, and there's a moment where he gets a fork in the road, and everyone's like, that way is Jerusalem, where they're going to kill you. This way is a whole load of other options, and it says the disciples were amazed because he turns and he walks towards Jerusalem. He's uncompromising. You couldn't change him. And he triumphed in trouble more than any in history. He was betrayed by one of his closest friends. He was abandoned by his other friends. He was arrested on false charges. He had to stand before people as they accused him of things that were totally untrue. He was ridiculed by people. He was ignored by the crowds. He was tortured, crucified, laid in a tomb. He rested there for a Friday evening, all day Saturday, early into Sunday morning, and then he rose and appeared to many. And in the midst of this, he assured people, he called people, he ate with people, he restored people, he empowered people, he sent people out, and he ascended and is enthroned in the heavenly places as the true king of all the universe. He's governing right now his church. He's equipping his followers to represent him and his way of life. And he'll do that until the day he returns and is enthroned as the king over all things of all time. I mean, that's pretty good triumph in the midst of quite a lot of trouble. And so we want to spend the summer dwelling on Jesus, just the astonishing man that he was, just to think about him. And I hope that you're going to get captured by him and be like, wow, like I'm actually thinking about Jesus more now Monday to Saturday than I was before the series. That's the plan, that you would just be sat there at work and you type in your memory, oh, just thought of Jesus. Oh, I wonder what he would be doing right now. The kindness of Jesus, the wisdom of Jesus, the power of Jesus. He would just begin to intoxicate us more and more, marinate into us more and more. And as we do that, wouldn't it be wonderful, like side effect, if we actually also become a little bit more like him? I mean, that would be kind of nice. So we're going to do a case study, a series of case studies, and the first case study is on the betrayal of Judas. So we've got the passage on the screen. This is from the ESV, just because I liked this translation, English Standard Version. Now the feast of unleavened bread drew near, which is called the Passover. And the chief priests and the scribes were seeking how to put him, Jesus, to death, for they feared the people. Then Satan entered into Judas called Iscariot, who was of the number of the 12. He went away and conferred with the chief priests and officers how he might betray him to them. And they were glad and agreed to give him money. So he consented and sought an opportunity to betray him to them in the absence of a crowd. Then came the day of unleavened bread, on which the Passover lamb had to be sacrificed. So Jesus sent Peter and John, saying, "Go and prepare the Passover for us, that we may eat it." Okay. Simple case study. Now, the ESV has actually tried to do us a bit of a favor here, because what it's done is it's substituted in verse 8. If you just go back, Caleb, to the first screen, it says, second screen. No, you're quite correct. So he. Now, it actually says there two instances of so he. You've got Judas, so he. So Judas does something, and you've got so he, Jesus does something. And what Luke is doing here is deliberately setting up for you two examples of two ways that you can go. Two different responses to situations. Judas is offered money, so he betrays Jesus. Jesus knows it's Passover, so he makes preparations. Can you say so? So. And so if you look on the next slide, you have two people responding to events. Now, so, as if you go to our English school, I hope I'm correct, you can tell me if I'm right or not. So is a conjunction that indicates causality between the event and the response to the event. There's an event, so he did this. So does, however, leave an element of choice in response to it. This happens, so that happens. But you don't have to, actually. It's not obligatory that in response to this event, so you have to do that. So let me give you a little example. When I was first courting my lovely wife, who is sat on the front row, Leslie, who is the senior pastor of the church. We were sat, and I just thought I'd take her out for a nice dinner, impress her with some really tasty food. So we were sat in Pizza Hut, and we were talking and getting to know one another. And as we're talking, a song comes on in the restaurant. An event occurs. A song comes on in the restaurant. And she goes, "Oh, it's a banger. I love this one." And she starts to respond. Now, at the time, I was listening to My Jesus, My Savior, Darlene, check, and And I was like, wow, I've never heard this song before. Bad Boys for Life by Puff Daddy. Is it a worship track? And an event occurred, so she responded. I can't vouch that that's 100% true, that story. But it makes a point. See, what Luke's saying is that there's events that are occurring around Jesus. There's events that are occurring around Judas, but they respond to one out of the many events. They respond to one out of the many events. As we were sat in Pizza Hut, there were many songs being played, but only one of them does Leslie say, it's a banger. I love this one. And so if we look at the next slide, you can see that for Judas, it was also Passover for Judas. It was also the fact that Jesus had said to Judas, "Would you follow me and be one of my 12?" He doesn't respond in the moment to either of those two events. The so that makes him go is he was offered money. He's offered money. So he responds to the offer of money by betraying Jesus. There's different events occurring. So he goes and betrays Jesus. Now let's look at Jesus. Because Jesus and Judas are next to each other. They're in the same circumstances, same events. Next one. Judas, he knows, is betraying him. The chief priests want to kill him, but what does Jesus respond to? What's the so that makes him go and act? It's Passover. It was Passover, so he went to make preparations. Can you see? There's events going on. There's different tunes being played. Judas responds to one, but Jesus responds to a totally different one. The so that makes him go is the truth of the scriptures that he knows, the story being played out and deliberately remembered through the action of Passover. And so if we're going to actually triumph in the midst of trouble, we should look at Jesus in the midst of trouble. Jesus is betrayed by a friend. Now, as pastors, we know many people, and when they are betrayed by a person who's very close to them, it's incredibly painful, isn't it? Have you been in that situation where either somebody you've been married to or in relationship with, or a parent or a family member or somebody at work, and they betray you? They betray you. The pain of that is so immense. It's very easy in the midst of that. You sit over and over, you get stuck in a loop, don't you? Like, why did they do this? I don't understand why. Why did they do it? I just don't know why. And I just feel stuck in a loop. I know I'm going round and round on this, but I can't do anything to get out of that. I just feel like I'm stuck in the midst of it. And do you know, nobody now still really knows why Judas betrayed Jesus. Nobody really knows why he did it. Some of these things, you're stuck, but you can't get out of it because you can't get the answer. And so others will say, well, then just forget it. Just move on. Just get busy. Don't think about it. Advance. Just forget. Just move on. Find a new person or fill your life with something else. Be busy. Just forget about it. Don't respond in any way to that. Just make it a non-event in your life. Rub it out as if it's never occurred. The trouble is with that is at the deep root of bitterness often, you feel it growing in your heart. And it pops out at moments to people that you never meant it to pop out to. And you feel it at night and you try and rub it out. But it's growing like a bitter root inside your heart. Now Jesus has been betrayed by one of his closest friends. Verse 14 of this chapter says, when the hour came, Jesus and his apostles, they were sat at Passover and they reclined at the table. Aren't they just words you just think? He's reclining while he's being betrayed by one of his closest friends. How? How can this man do this? Reclining. He's not like sat stressed at the table. He's reclining in the midst of this moment. What on earth could be the so that is making him recline? The so that has enabled him to do this in the midst of this trouble? Well, Passover. It's there already in the scriptures. It's there already in the history. Passover is a key moment to remember the story of Scripture, the story of how God interacts and redeems a world in the midst of trouble. The story of Scripture, rather than his emotions, are what is defining Jesus' response. He's like, I'm going to choose to respond in this moment to the story of the Scripture. And Jesus himself, the way that Luke's written this gospel is he sets this up just in the previous chapter, where Jesus says to his disciples, this is what he says, and you should see on the screen, be careful, or your hearts will be weighed down with carousing, drunkenness, and the anxieties of life, and that day will close on you suddenly like a trap, for it will come on all those who live on the face of the whole earth. Be always on the watch and pray that you may be able to escape what is about to happen, and that you may be able to stand before the Son of Man. What's Jesus saying? Jesus says the story of your life will be this. There will be trouble. There'll be temptation. There'll be what you might call tribulation. There'll be challenge that's going to come on you. That's the story of this earth. Your hearts could so easily be weighed down by this. You could so easily be crushed by this. So what should you do? Well, know this. God will come to restore and redeem and clear all the trouble out and give back to any who've remained faithful in the midst of it. There is an end in sight that he is going to bring. The Son of Man will come. And he will give back to you all that's been stolen, and he'll restore to you all that was taken, and he'll celebrate over you all the faithful acts of devotion to God that you have followed. And to those who have slipped away, the day will be like a trap. So he says, do this. Pray for strength to be able to stand. Jesus is like, there will be trouble. So pray now and always for strength to stand so you can triumph in the midst of trouble. You triumph through praying, through prayer, through leaning on the big story of the Scriptures. And Passover, so what Jesus does, he's like, well, let's lean into the story. Let's let that be, the Scriptures be the so that makes me go. So you could be in a situation today. Your friend or your partner or somebody's just betrayed you. So. It could be that you're surrounded by your enemies. So. It could be that you've had a bad week. So. It could be that you're tired. So. Jesus says this. Let your so come from this. Let your so come from this. Sunday comes, so I'll be where the Lord has called me to be, worshiping with his people. Income comes, so we give our first fruit. Morning breaks, so we open the scriptures. A friend becomes an enemy, so we treat them with love and turn the other cheek. Trouble comes, so I pray and ask for strength. The so that you go to comes from Jesus' flow. Okay? He likes it. See, Jesus comes to save and to liberate you. He doesn't come to condemn. He comes to save and to liberate you. And what he does is effectively he takes this book, which is slightly removed from the vast majority of us, and he says, let me put this story into your heart. Let me give you the gift of the story of Scripture in your guts so that in every instance you'll know the word and the truth that God himself has always, will always look at those in trouble and come to them and give them strength to stand, that they can be his people. So Jesus offers you an event, always, a constant event. He is the event that you can respond to in every circumstance. He invites you into the great story of Scripture that will be in your heart. Now, let's just use another little illustration for this. If you've gone to a school like a prom, if you grew up in this country, this is like if you didn't, this is like a British tradition that I'm going to tell you about. If you grew up overseas, here's a British tradition that you should know about. Go to school, go to university, there'll be a party. And no matter what music starts the party, towards the end of the evening, at some point, this track will come on. And this is, you should know this. Let's hopefully it's going to I wonder, are we going to have a bit? Come on, let's do it. Dale a tu cuerpo alegría Macarena, que tu cuerpo para dar la alegría cosa buena. Dale a tu cuerpo alegría Macarena, Macarena. Dale a tu cuerpo alegría Macarena, que tu cuerpo para dar la alegría cosa buena. Dale a tu cuerpo alegría Macarena, Macarena. Dale a tu cuerpo alegría Macarena, que tu cuerpo para dar la alegría cosa buena. Dale a tu cuerpo alegría Macarena, Macarena. There you go. Now, some of you, even before I told you what to do, were already doing it. Weren't you? Come on, put your hands up. You already knew, hey, Macarena. Oh, it's the hands. Is it that? Yeah, the hands down first, then that one, and you knew it, right? The event of Macarena has been served into your life. So, every time you hear it, oh, Macarena, I know what I'm doing. You see, you've been trained in it. If you grew up in this country, through the school system, went to those kind of events, you just know. The so of Macarena means this is how you act. Now, Jesus is, hey, Macarena. He takes the scriptures and he presents it to you in every circumstance. Hey, Macarena, here's how you respond to trouble. Here's what you do. Hey, no matter which way you're facing, you do these things in response to trouble. This is what you do. It's the truth of the scriptures. You see, he says, Jesus died. I've died for you, he says. He says, I've risen as a victory over all that is evil. I've been given the throne to ensure everlasting goodness of this creation is preserved and even enhanced. And my kingdom, says Jesus, will know no end. Hey, Macarena. Jesus knows Satan. He's defeated him. In the end, he will destroy every source of evil. Nothing surprises Jesus. Nothing threatens Jesus. The worst thing that could possibly happen to you, he knows about. He's defeated it. He's overcome it. He is present with you in the midst of it. Hey, Macarena. Jesus knows that means it's not easy for you now. There's trouble on this earth, but all you have to do is pray. You don't have to be strong in yourself. You don't have to be wise or smart in yourself. You don't have to have made great decisions through your whole life. You don't even need a great group of friends. All you have to do is pray, and Jesus will rush in and help you. Hey, Macarena. Jesus' mercy, he says, is for those who fear him. If you come to him hungry, he'll give you good things. If you come to him weak, he'll give you strength. The best life for you is in his hands. Even now, simply, if you humble yourself before him, he will exalt you. If you just pursue him, huge fruit will come into your life. Hey, Macarena. You're filled with the Spirit. You're sent as an ambassador of him himself. He makes you like him. He enables you to be a blessing to every family upon the earth, no matter who you are, no matter how talented or untalented you are, no matter how rich or how poor, no matter what you've done in the past, no matter how gifted you are at speaking, no matter if you feel like there's nothing you can offer, Jesus will use you to bring blessing to every family on the earth. It's not a burden because you only do a small part, but the part you play is valuable. It's a huge and dynamic purpose that is like a tiny thread in the tapestry of his great blessing and his great plan for all of eternity and all of life. Hey, Macarena. That's the truth of the Scriptures. That's the story of the Scriptures. And so, Jesus says, will you let that be present to you in the midst of trouble? When you're betrayed, don't pretend it hasn't happened. Don't minimize it. But hear the words of Jesus. The pain you're feeling right now, I see it, I know it. Let me stand with you in the midst of this. Don't give in. But know this. You are still to be a blessing to the person next to you. You can still be used by me to bring others to life. You have a value that other person doesn't see. But I'm with you. I will use you. People want to kill you. They want to hurt you. They're against you. Don't deny it. Don't pretend it isn't real. Don't get crushed by it. Just refuse to allow it to be the only thing you think about. Instead, open the Scriptures, read the Psalms, go through the Psalms till you get to that point like, here's a verse. This is the word of the Lord to me right now. This is him speaking to me to equip me in this time. Let this be the sow that causes me to go. What am I going to do tomorrow now? My God. And so we're contending for awakening as a church. That's what we're saying we're doing. And we're contending because we know there is trouble. It's not a breeze. Life isn't just a bed of roses. We have to contend. We know that in this coming week, there will be many people in Croydon who hear the worst news they've ever heard in their whole life. We know there's people in our midst, friends and family, who will have hardship and challenge. And we contend. We contend because of that. We contend. We let... for a spiritual awakening. We contend that in the midst of these challenges and these troubles and these trials, a strained marriage, a job redundancy, finances being low, like a relationship with someone in your family will no longer speak to you, a situation where you're battling pain in your body. We contend for the awakening that you, here in this room, going through this today, you will hear God himself speaking to you, that his truth, his story of the Scriptures will fuel you, not to deny the situation, but in the midst of that situation, to be somebody so wise, so generous, so filled with power, so imbued with the very likeness of Jesus, that in the midst of that, you just release blessing and life. And perhaps receive the blessing and life yourself, or perhaps not. It's the now and the not yet of the kingdom. We want to see this church, our vision, our dream, what we're contending for. When we say, let's go and kneel and pray, let's contend for spiritual awakening, when we open our mouths and like, God, would you move? What we're praying for is that every single person in this room, in every moment, would hear the story of God, and so they would act out of that. In their workplace, in their homes, with disappointment, with moments of celebration. That's what we're fighting for in prayer. And beyond that, beyond the people in this room, wouldn't it be amazing? Wouldn't it be amazing? Just if people you know, your neighbors, people in your family, friends, just wouldn't it be so amazing if their life didn't necessitate them having to respond to the trouble? That their soul wasn't purely dictated by negative things. Their soul wasn't purely caused by things that they didn't like. What if their soul actually could be dictated by the beauty of the gospel of Jesus Christ? Wouldn't that just be the most incredible thing for them? So that is what we're contending for. A spiritual awakening, that this incredible man Jesus would enable us to actually just become a little bit more like him, that we can see triumph even in the midst of trouble.